Welcome to the channel. Now, you're only going to watch your guns being knocked around in the boot of your mate's car so many times before you get one of these pelly cases. Now, the pelly cases, they bring us to an interesting place of DIY. I know that there are pelly cases or these hard cases, let's call them hard cases, that have those square foam nubs that you rip out. I don't particularly rate those very highly for myself. And the one that I went for has the solid 3-layer foam. And I lay my my case out that I have my 4 magazines, I have my ammunition, I have my range log on here that I write in my shooting adjustments, I have some rudimentary tools and a pen, I have my soft shooting bag, I have my hard rest that I can clamp on the rear in case I'm shooting off the bench, there's my bolt, and over here we have the muzzle brake and my can. That means that basically, if you want to undertake your own case like this, you're going to have to do some cutting of this foam material. Now, they help you to some extent by providing 3 layers. There's a bottom layer which is quite thin, which stays in there. It's to cushion you. You then have 2 sizable layers, and then you have the top layer. And that means that for deep indentations like this shooting bag, you can cut 2 pieces. For thinner ones, like this moderator, you only cut 1. The one thing that you cannot escape from is cutting the foam. And that is the subject of today's video. In my last video, I mentioned the benefits of shooting buddies, and this is a prime example. The resistance wire here, I blagged of a shooting buddy who did all the work effectively for me, who did his case before I did mine. And so he kindly let me have a couple of meters of 4 ohms resistance wires and some rudimentary instructions. Mike, if you're watching, I still owe you one. To facilitate cutting, all we really have to do is run electrical current through this Nichrome wire. My approach to that is to use this power supply. This is just something I had kicking around. This particular one is 6 volt at 2.5 amps. The previous one I had was 9 volt and had a lower ampage, but that one burnt out. I mean, don't use anything precious. Your Nichrome wire effectively is, a borderline, a short circuit given its consumption. So these guys heat up, and if you leave it plugged in too long, they'll literally just burn out. Now, at the bottom of this, to get my power, I have on one side I sold a little ring, on the other one I have a little metal slider, and at the bottom of my Nichrome wire I have an adjustable screw. And the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run one of the ground, I'm going to run that all the way down my cable onto my adjustable screw, like so. And at that stage I'm going to feed this wire through a hole that I have in my workbench. And that ties up with above where I have a steel ruler suspended just off the shelf that I have there. And I'm going to tension my cable between those 2 points. Nice and simple. Right. So I've screwed my bolt in, which has the ground cable from the power supply into one of the screw holes that I use for mounting presses, and I will now take the positive lead, which is here, and I will slide that on. I have a little terminator block, but the Nichrome wire will fit straight through it, and that then effectively is our positive. Like so. Next, I'll take my Nichrome wire and I'll put a little bit of tension on up here, and I'll put a little kink on, and I'll hold it in place with a bit of tape. Anything really will do. I'm using this cotton stuff. Right, last positive step is to move this power supply over here, and I'm going to tie down these cables again with another bit, just so they don't slide around. Now, when we punch in the power supply, we will close the circuit between the ground. It runs up the cable, goes to this slider here and back there, and this gets hot. Now you can adjust it by moving the slider up and down, and thus you can increase and decrease the heat. Your choices here are to run this thing hot, where we move this down, the cable gets, this wire gets much hotter. The trouble with that is you tend to burn the material, and I did not like that. I mean, as it is, this produces a lot of smoke and vapors that I'm not a fan of. So I tend to run mine at a temperature where the foam will slowly melt, and that means that you get less fumes. Now, the unpleasant part with all this, of course, is that if you need to cut out a circle or a shape inside the foam, you have to pierce the foam, run your cable through, reconnect everything before you can cut your shape without cutting your way into the foam. That can get very tedious, but there's really no way around that. In order to get straight lines when I'm cutting, I don't mind using a ruler or even a set square so that I get nice clean results. And after that, it's just a question of carrying on. Now, my last bit of advice here would be that realistically, you want to unplug your power supply whenever you're not cutting. And I would keep a good feel of the power supply, and when it warms up too much, I'd have a break. That's really all that's to it. This is my setup. It's not the only setup. Your setup might well be better. So don't be afraid to experiment and come up with something clever yourself. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.